Okay guys, the first thing we're going to do in 7.6 is we're going to graph the systems of inequalities. And this should be semi of a review for us because we know how to graph inequalities by themselves. Now we're just graphing all the inequalities together. And you guys have the notes down. So let's take a look at or you should have the notes down. So let's take a look at example 1. Example 1 gives me the system y is less than 2, x is greater than or equal to -1, and y is greater than x minus 2. Our notes remind us to graph each one of these using one of the 4 quick graph methods, and then to remember what type of line we use, and then to also do shading. And then it said in the end, where there is shared shading, meaning where all of the shading coincides, is where our solutions lie. Okay, so let's start off with this guy here. Y is less than 2. That's an example of a horizontal line, y equals 2. So if I'm going to graph, here's 2. I look up at that line, it's going to be a dotted line. Then remember to shade, it says to pick a point. I usually try to pick 0, 0 and see if it's true. Is 0 less than 2? Yes, it is. So I'm going to shade towards that point. And we don't want to do a bunch of scribbling because we're going to have some other shading going with this. Okay? So now let's take a look at the second one. We have x is greater than or equal to -1. So that's like x equals -1. So here's -1. That's going to be a solid line since it has the equal to underneath it. So I've got this nice vertical solid line. Then I have to decide where to shade. So again, I'm going to use 0, 0 because it's not on my line. Is 0 greater than or equal to -1? Yes, 0 is greater than a negative number, so I'm going to shade in the direction of that point. Now you can already see kind of where my solutions are forming because it wouldn't be up here. I don't have my first shading. It wouldn't be down here. I don't have my second shading. But right here, I've got both types of shading. So there's where my solutions are beginning to form. Let's do the last one. The last one's in y equals mx plus b. Where do I begin? At -2 on the y-axis. How do I move? Up 1 over 1. Sorry, I should have had my graph a little bit better. What type of line? Doesn't have the equal to underneath it, so it's going to be a dotted line. And then how do I know where to shade? I'm going to again pick 0, 0 since it's not on my line. Is 0 greater than 0 minus 2? Well, that would be 0 is greater than -2. Yes, 0 is greater than a negative number. So I'm going to shade in the direction of this point. I'm going to shade up. Now, my final piece is to darken the place where there's all 3 shading, and you can see that it's inside this triangle here. Sometimes, guys, it helps to use more than one color, and you're more than welcome to do that if you want. You can use as many colors as you want, and then you can see, where all of the colors coincide, that would be your final answer. You're welcome to do that as well. Okay, let's take a look at example 3. And in fact, guys, if you just hold up for a second, let me go grab 3 markers because there's 4 inequalities in this one. I'm going to turn my board too. And I'll do it with 3 colors, so just hold on a sec. So since I don't have graph paper here, I'm going to do my graph part in black. So we have x is greater than or equal to 0, y is greater than or equal to 0, y is less than or equal to 2, and y is less than or equal to negative 1/2 x plus 3. And then here's my graph. Okay, hopefully that helps that setup. Okay, so my first one is x is greater than or equal to 0. That's a vertical line, x equals 0. So here I am at 0. I'm supposed to draw a vertical line. It's a solid vertical line since it has that equal to underneath it. So here's my vertical line. Okay, then I'm going to decide where to shade. Now I can't pick 0 this time because it's on my line. So let's pick 1. Is 1 greater than or equal to 0? Yes, it is. So I'm going to shade in the direction of that point. Okay, now I'm going to grab my second color. My second inequality is y is greater than or equal to 0. So that's a horizontal line. Y equals 0. Here's 0. I'm supposed to be drawing a horizontal line. It's a solid line since it's an equal to. So here's my solid line. Then I have to decide where to shade. Well, again, I can't pick 0, 0 because he's on my line. So let's pick 1. Is 1 greater than or equal to 0? Obviously, yes it is. So I'm going to shade up in the direction of 1. Since 1 worked, he's a solution, he needs to be shaded. Okay, there's my second one. My third one is y is less than or equal to 2. So I have another horizontal line at 2. I'm supposed to be drawing a horizontal line here at 2. It's a solid line since I have that equal to. So there's my horizontal line. Sorry, let me make that darker. Okay. Then I'm supposed to decide where to shade. Now this time I can do 0, 0 because he's not on my blue line. Is 0 less than or equal to 2? Yes, he is. So I'm going to shade down. You can kind of see where my shaded region is forming. It's where I have red, green, and blue right here in between. Okay, I'm ready for my last line. My last line is in y equals mx plus b. So where to begin? I begin at 3 on the y-axis. And then my slope is negative 1/2. So I'm going to move down 1 over 2. Sorry, my colors aren't working very well together. Then down 1 over 2. Solid line since I have that equal to. Then I need to pick a point. I can pick 0, 0 because he's not on my line. Is 0 less than or equal to negative 1/2 times 0 plus 3? Well, this side, negative 1/2 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. Is 0 less than or equal to 3? Yes, it is. 0 is less than or equal to 3. So that means this worked. So I'm going to shade on this side of my line. Now remember, in the end, you have to go back and tell me where are your final answers. Well, in my case, it's where I have red, blue, orange, and green. So my final answers are right in this little trapezoid looking region, right there. Okay. All right, so that's how you can do that with colors. That's how you can do that with colors. Now let's try one more. I'm going to show you one more way to, actually, sorry, no, I'm going to show you two more ways. Let's look at number 15. Look at number 15. Now, I'm going to show you one more way to do this. So I've showed you how to do it with one color. I've showed you how to do it with as many colors as you need, depending on the inequality. And now I'm going to show you how to use one color and to try to almost like clean up your work so that it's not so messy and you're trying to decide, well, where is my shaded region, okay? All right, and my red marker worked really well, so I'm going to use red here. Just a second. Okay, so I'm looking at number 15, and 15 says 2x plus y is greater than 2, and 6x plus 3y is less than 12. Now notice both of these, because x and y are on the same side, are in cover-up method. Okay? Let me get my graph drawn here. Okay, so for cover-up method, to find x, 2 divided by 2 is 1. For y, 2 divided by 1 is 2. Remember, these go on their axis. So here's 1, and here's 2. It doesn't have the equal to underneath it. That means it's a dotted line all the way across your coordinate plane. Now I have to decide where to shade. I can do 0, 0 because he wasn't on my line. Is 2 times 0 plus 0 greater than 2? Is 0 plus 0 greater than 2? No, it is not. All right, so that point did not work. That means I'm going to shade the other side of my line. That point did not work. 0 is not greater than 2, so I shade the other side of my line because that means 0, 0 was not a solution, so he should not be shaded. Now let's do my other line. X is 12 divided by 6. That gives me 2. Y is 12 divided by 3. That gives me 4. These need to go on their axis. So here's 2 and here's 4. Dotted or solid line. He does not have the equal to, so he's a dotted line. Now we need to check shading. We can use 0, 0 because he's not on my line. Is 6 times 0 plus 3 times 0 less than 12? 6 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. Is 0 plus 0 less than 12? Yes, it is. That means this works. Here's my line, and I'm going to shade towards that 0, 0 because he worked. But check it out. There's no sense in checking in. There's no sense in shading over here because you don't have any shading to begin with. That means there are no solutions there already. So I am only going to shade down where I already have shading. And you can see that that's just between the two lines. So then my final answers are right here between the two lines. I only shaded down where I already had shading. And then I darkened in my region. Okay, so let's do that method again. And well, if you wish, I'm going to use that method again. I'm going to do this on number 25. Number 25. So on 25, we've got 4 inequalities again. We've got x is greater than or equal to 2. We have x minus 2y is greater than or equal to 3. We have 3x plus y is greater than or equal to 9. and then x plus y is less than or equal to 7. Okay, so 4 inequalities here. Okay, so first one, x is greater than or equal to 2. That's a vertical line, x equals 2, so here's 2. I know it needs to be a vertical line, and it's a solid line. Then I can test 0, 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to 2? No, it is not, so I'm going to shade the other side where 0 is not. Now I'm ready for my second one. The second one's in cover-up because x and y are on the same side. So x equals 3 divided by 1. That's 3. Y equals 3 divided by negative 2. That's negative 1.5. Remember, these go on their axis. So here's 3 on the x-axis. Here's negative 1.5 on the y-axis. It's a solid line because I have that equal to. Now I'm going to sub 0, 0 in because it's not on my line. Is 0 minus 2 times 0 greater than or equal to 3? No, 0 is not greater than or equal to 3. This point did not work, so I'm going to shade the other side of my line, meaning I'm going to shade down, but I'm only going to shade down where I already have shading, meaning it does me no good to shade down over here, but oh, okay, now I can start shading down, and you can see where your shaded region is starting to form. Okay, so I only shaded down where I already had shaded region. Now I'm ready for my third one. X is 9 divided by 3, which would give me 3. Y is 9 divided by 1, which is 9. Remember, these go on their x and y axis. So here's x is 3. Here's y is 9. It's a solid line because of that equal to. Oh, crumbs. Not a very good line, guys. Sorry. Okay. All right, so here's my line. Putting in 0, 0 is 3 times 0 plus 0 greater than or equal to 9. No, 0 is not greater than or equal to 9. This guy didn't work. Here's my line. This guy didn't work, so I'm going to shade the other side. I'm going to shade up and to the right. But I'm only shading right where I already have double shading. So no, no, no. Oh, here now I have double shading. So now I'm going to start shading up. You can see that I kind of have this triangle part right here forming. Okay. Making sure I got everything done there. Okay, so now I've got my last one. X plus y, that's in cover up as well. X is 7, y is 7, and you've got a solid line. Okay, now I've got to pick my shading. I can pick 0, 0. Is 0 plus 0 less than or equal to 7? Yes, it is. So here's 0, 0. Here's my line. Yes, it worked. So I'm going to shade down towards it. but I'm only shading down where I have triple shading. Okay, I only have double shading here. All right, but here now I have triple shading. So my final answers are in that region. Okay, now again, I don't care which method you use. If you like to use all one color and shade everything and then find your shaded region, that's fine. If you like to use different colors and then decide where you have all your colors, that's fine. If you like this last way where you're only shading where you have shading, I'm fine with that too. Okay, it's whatever works for you. So that's the first part of your homework, is to graph those systems of inequalities. Okay, so now let's switch gears and now let's write the systems of inequalities. Okay, and I'm going to draw the graph so that you can see it as well. So we're looking at the same thing. I know it's in your book, and no, you do not have to draw them on your paper, but I just want to be on the same page as you. So I'm going to draw example 2 so we're all looking at the same thing. So example 2 looks like okay, it looks like this. All right. So the first thing I do when I am writing this system now, when I'm writing the inequalities to make this system, is I decide how many lines make up that shaded region. Well, really, there's only 2 here. The shading is in between these 2 lines. So I number my lines, and then I'm going to work on them separately. So let's start out with number 1. Now, in your notes, it says, use that flow chart to write the equation of your line. Well, guys, this is an easy one because this is a horizontal line. You know a horizontal line is supposed to look like y equals a number. You don't even have to use that flow chart. You should know that, okay? Since this is a horizontal line, it's y equals a number, then you've got to decide, well, what's your y value? 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I just look at this as an equation, I have y equals 4. Now I have to decide which symbol to use. Well, we can see that it's a dotted line, so that makes life a little easy for me. I know it's either going to be less than or greater than. So I've kind of process of elimination now. Now I've got to decide if it's less than or if it's greater than. And it said pick a point that's inside the shaded region. Okay, well, what about if I pick 0, 2? Okay, so I'm picking 0, 2. And it says to sub that in to your equation. Well, I don't have an x in my equation, so I'm supposed to use just the y. 2 is what compared to 4? Is it less than or is it greater than? 2 is less than, because remember I'm supposed to be making a true statement because it's inside the shaded region. That means it should be true. So 2 is less than 4. That makes my true statement. So now I'm going to use that symbol for my original. Y is less than 4. Now you can go back and check if you want. Think about this. If you were to graph this, you would go to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You draw a horizontal dotted line. And then if you put 0 in, is 0 less than 4? Yes, it is. So you would have shaded down from that line. So yes, that works. Now let's try the second line. The second line, again, you don't need to use your flow chart because it's a horizontal line. So you know you're looking at y equals a number. So we have to decide what number. Well, it cuts through the y-axis at 1. Then I have to decide what symbol it is. Well, we can see a dotted line, so we know it's either less than or greater than. Then we need to pick a point in its shaded region. Well, let's just use 0, 2 again because 2 was in its shaded region. We're subbing this in to y equals 1. We don't have an x in this equation, so we're just going to sub the y in. 2 is what? And according to 1. And remember, since it was in the shaded region, I need to be making a true statement, either by using a less than or greater than symbol. So is 2 less than 1 or is 2 greater than 1? 2 is, of course, greater than 1. So then my inequality has to be greater than 1. So my final answer is y is less than 4 and y is greater than 1. That would be my final answer for my systems of inequality. Now, that one was super easy, guys. So let's try another one of those, okay? Let's try another one of those. Let's look at number 13. So we're going to turn over to page 435. And again, give me a second to draw this so we're all looking at the same thing. Now, this one's tricky, guys, because they count by twos. So be careful about that. You got to make sure you're watching their scale. Okay. All right. So, again, the first thing I do is I decide how many lines make up this shaded region. 2. Okay. So now I'm going to work these one at a time. So let's start with number 1. Now, number 1 is obviously not a horizontal or vertical line, so I have to work a little harder on this. I'm going to have to use my flow chart. Now, remember, my flow chart asks for, do they give me the slope and the y-intercept? Do they give me the slope and a point? Or do they give me 2 points? Now, you could count slope using a graph, okay? I'm not going to argue that by any means, but I would much rather when they give you a graph, I would much rather you pick 2 points off of it. Now, one of those points can be the y-intercept. That's fine. For instance, like we can see that the number 1 line crosses the y-axis at 0, 1. So I would definitely use him as one of the points because you know he's the B. Okay? But then I try to pick out another point, which this one I can see crosses here as well. So that, oh, shoot a deck. Remember, we're counting by twos here. So that's 0, 2. All right, and so then this point where we can see crosses exactly would be negative 4, 0. Okay, now we're going back, clear back into chapter, 5? If they give me 2 points, what do? I've got to find the slope. So 0 minus 2, negative 4 minus 0. That gives me negative 2 over negative 4, which is 1/2. Positive 1/2 since I had 2 negatives there. Then remember from here, I have my M, I have my B, so my final would be y equals 1/2 x plus 2. Remember, my B is right here, my slope is right here. Okay, now if you wanted to use y equals mx plus b form, pick a point, or if you wanted to use point slope form, that's fine too. You would have gotten the same answer, okay? But if you recognize that you have the b because it crossed the y-axis up here, that'll make life a little easier for you, okay? Now I have to determine what symbol I'm using. Number 1 is a solid line. That means he is either less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. Then it says pick a true point. So give me a point in that shaded region. Well, 0, 0 would be an easy one. He's in that shaded region. So let's put him into my equation and let's make a true statement. So 0 is what compared to 1/2 times 0 plus 2? If I clean this side up, 1/2 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. So 0 is what in regards to 2? 0 is less than or equal to. Remember, you're picking one of these two symbols. Is 0 less than or equal to, or is 0 greater than or equal to 2? 0 is less than or equal to 2. So that means if I go back to this piece right here, this would have to be y is less than or equal to 1/2 x plus 2. Now remember, we need to hold on to him because we've still got to do line 2 up here, and we're going to do it the exact same way. So for line 2, we're going to, again, pick 2 points off of that line. I definitely can see the y-intercept. I can see where it crosses exactly. Remember, we're counting by 2's here. So it crosses at 0, -2. And I'm going to remind myself that that's the b. And then I can also see that it crosses right here at positive 4, 0. Once I have my 2 points, I need to find the slope. 0 plus 2, 4 minus 0. That would give me 2 over 4, or 1/2. Then remember, because I have the b, I can go right to my equation. Y equals 1/2 x minus 2. There was my m, there was my b. Now I have to decide what symbol to use. Well, this is a solid line, so I know my symbols are either going to be less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. I need to pick a point in the shaded region because it's a true point. So let's use 0, 0 again, and let's make a true statement out of it. So we've got 0 is what in regards to 1/2 times 0 minus 2. I'm going to have to clean this side up a little bit. 1/2 times 0 is 0, minus 2 is -2. 0 is what compared to -2? Well, 0 would be greater than or equal to -2. So now use that symbol for your equation. Y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x minus 2. Now I've got to put these two guys together. So my final answer would be y is less than or equal to 1/2 x plus 2, and y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x minus 2. There's my final answer. Okay? Whew, I know, that's a little bit harder than graphing. Let's try one more. Let's do number 30. Now, number 30 goes about it a little bit differently. Number 30 says, plot the points, draw the line segments connecting the points to create the polygon, then write a system of linear inequalities that defines the polygonal region. Okay, wow. So it does tell me that the region is a triangle. And it gives me the points -2, 0, 2, 0, and 0, 2. So first off, it tells me to plot these. To draw the line segments, and then they're saying the shaded region would be in here. And they want to know the system of inequalities that would create that region. Well, remember, the first thing I do is I ask myself, how many lines created that shaded region? We know a triangle has 3 lines. So here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. And you can label them in whatever order you want, okay? All right, so now that means I'm going to have to do these steps 3 times. So let's look at number 1. And I'm going to have to write a little smaller here since I've got to do 3 lines. Now, number 1, remember, I need to pick out 2 points from that line. Well, remember, they gave you the points. This one would be -2, 0. And this one would be 0, 2. He's on the y-axis. That's your B. Once I have 2 points, I need to find the slope. So we've got 2 minus 0 and 0 plus 2, which would be 2 over 2 or 1. Now that I have the slope and the b, the m and the b, I can put it into y equals mx plus b form. So y equals 1x plus 2. Remember, I don't need to write the 1. He's there in front of the x, even if I can't see it. Now I need to decide what symbol to use. Well, he's a solid line, so he's either less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And I need to pick a point from the shaded region. Now notice 0, 0 is down here, but he's on one of my lines, so I really wouldn't recommend to use him. He's going to make life confusing. Because if we just pick a point inside that shaded region, then we can use that same point every time. So for instance, let's pick 0, 1. Okay, 0, 1, and then we can use that same point every time. So we need to put 0, 1 into this equation, and we need to decide which symbol will make a true statement. So 1 is what compared to 0 plus 2? So 1 is what compared to 2? Is 1 less than or equal to or greater than or equal to? It would be less than or equal to. So now I need to use that symbol for my equation above. Y is less than or equal to x plus 2. And I need to hold on to him. Okay, now let's go to line 2. Now, line 2, if you take a look up here, they give you the B. Again, we're using 0, 2. And then my other point that they give me is over here at 2, 0. Now that I have 2 points, let's find the slope. 0 minus 2, 2 minus 0 gives me negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. Now I have the slope and the b, so y equals negative, whoops, don't need that 1 there, negative x plus 2. Because remember, there's a negative 1 there. Even if I can't see it, I don't have to write him. Now I have to decide what symbol to use. It's a solid line, so I know it's either less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, and I'm picking the point 0, 1 because we know he should be a true statement. So if I put that in, 1 is what compared to negative 0 plus 2? So that would be 1 is what compared to 2? Well, we already know that would be less than or equal to because it was the same way over here. So then I've got to put it back in my equation that I formed. Y is less than or equal to negative x plus 2. There's my second inequality. Okay. Now I need to go to my third one. Well, notice, guys, what do you notice about that line? It's horizontal. So we definitely know that line 3 is a y equals a number. So then we just have to decide, well, y equals what number? Well, it goes through 0 on the y-axis. So there's my equation. That was easy. Now what line or what symbol would it be? Well, it's a solid line, so it's either less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And remember, this whole time we've been picking the point 0, 1 to test because we know he's true. Well, this doesn't have an x, so all I have to put in is the 1. 1 is what, according to 0? Is it less than or equal to or greater than or equal to? 1 is greater than or equal to 0. So that means y is greater than or equal to 0. Now I'm going to take my 3 pieces and I'm going to put them together. There's my final answer. Okay, so that takes a little more work. But you can do it. All right, now let's switch gears one more time. The last piece that you wrote down in your notes was about problem solving. And remember, it really didn't say much different than what we've been doing as far as problem solving before. It just reminded you that you have to have positive answers in real life situations. So you always have to have x is greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than or equal to 0. So if you take a look at example 4, let's get down the important information. It says you're ordering lighting for theater so the spotlights can follow the performers. The lighting technician needs at least means greater than or equal to. So I need greater than or equal to 3 mediums. And at least, again, greater than or equal to 1 long throw. It says a medium throw spotlight costs $1,000. And a long throw spotlight costs $3,500. And the minimum, that means I have to spend that or more. So that would be greater than or equal to. Order for free delivery is $10,000. And they want me to write and graph a system of linear inequalities that shows how many mediums and longs should be ordered to get the free delivery. Okay? All right, so let's talk about our labels here. We've got medium, long, dollars, dollars, dollars. Those are my labels. Now remember, when we set up equations, or I know we're going to set up inequalities eventually, but when we set up equations, we base them on our labels. So we know we're going to need 1 for equations, 1 for mediums, 1 for longs, and then all of these deal with dollars, so we could probably put them in an equation together. Okay? So we know our equation has to have an x and a y. So let's start out and let's make the mediums be the x. And it says that the mediums, or x, has to be greater than or equal to 3. There's my first equation. Inequality, sorry. The second one says he's dealing with longs. So let's label him y. And it wants at least greater than or equal to 1. So we've got y is greater than or equal to 1. Then these 3 pieces all deal with dollars. So we're thinking, okay, we know medium is x. We know long is y. The 2 types of equations we have that deal with x and y are either y equals mx plus b or cover-up method. Y equals mx plus b has to have a beginning and a rate. Cover-up method has to have 2 types of something. We have 2 types of something. We have 2 types of lights. So this would be 1,000x plus 3,500y, because I'm going to pay 1,000 for each medium, 3,500 for each long, and I want to make sure I get enough so that I spend at least $10,000 so I can get the free shipping. Now remember, this is all the information they gave us, but in our notes, we said we have to get positive answers. That means, why did I write 0 there? Nobody even caught me in my own imaginary world here? Okay, yeah, that should have been 3 because it was 3 up here, sorry. Okay, in our notes, we said we had to get positive answers, so that means x has to be greater than or equal to 0. He can't be negative, and y can't be negative either. So you have to have these 2 always. They're not going to remind you of that. So we've written the system. Now we need to graph it. So we've got x is greater than or equal to 3. That's a vertical line. Ooh, I better start with my biggest one and make sure I don't need to go by a scale. Okay, we know this guy's in cover-up method. And x would be 10,000 divided by 1,000. That's 10. 10,000 divided by 3,500 would be 2.85. 86 actually. So I could count by ones. That's doable. All right, so let's go back to this guy again. There's 3. I need a solid line. Pick 0, 0. Is 0 greater than 3? No, he is not. So I'm going to shade the other side. Okay, now I'm looking at my other one. Y is greater than or equal to 1. Here's 1. Solid line. Is 0 greater than or equal to 1? No, it's not. So I'm going to shade up. Okay, now I'm ready for my cover-up one, and we already know that x is 10 and y is 2.86. Solid line. Wowzers. Is 1,000 times 0 plus 3,500 times 0 greater than or equal to 10,000? So you know this is all going to be 0. Is 0 greater than or equal to 10,000? No, it is not. He did not work, so I'm going to shade the other side. You can see your shaded region forming right here between this horizontal, this line, and this vertical. And then your last two, x is greater than or equal to 0 and y is greater than or equal to 0, what that does is that wants to make sure that it's in first quadrant. So here's x is greater than or equal to 0, and it tells you to shade this way. Here's y is greater than or equal to 0, and it wants you to shade up. I probably should have shaded them first. So my final answer is from this vertical line, then I hit this diagonal, then I hit that horizontal line at 2, and go on forever. We call this an unbounded region because it will continue to go up forever this direction. Okay. Now part B says, will an order of 4 medium spotlights and 1 long throw spotlight be delivered free? Now remember, medium was X, so they're saying, can X be 4 and 1 be Y? Vice versa, sorry. Can X be 4 and Y be 1? Well, let's go over here and look. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then here is 1 right here. To me, it looks like that is not going to work because my horizontal or my diagonal line is right here and I'm underneath that. So I say no, which if you look at the solution, theirs is spread out a little bit more than mine. You can see that that 4, 1 is not in the shaded region. So you would say, no, you cannot purchase 4 medium and long throw spotlights and get free delivery. Okay, so there's an example of a real life situation. Let's try another one. Let's look at, that was example, I think I wrote example 3 there, guys, but that was example 4. Okay, that was example 4. Now, I'm going to give you an extra example from my book. So we're just going to call this example 4 star. Okay, so fix that in your notes. That last one was example 4. Okay, this is going to be example 4 star. Now, this is not in your notes. This is not in your notes. Okay, but I want you to listen and we'll get down information as I read. Okay, all right, so it says you have a gift certificate to a movie theater. Movies cost $7 for adults. Okay, let's write that down. Cheapers, my markers. And $5 for children. It says you need to spend at least, you know that's greater than or equal to, guys. You need to spend at least as much as the $50 certificate. So you need to spend at least $50. You want at least 2 adults to go. At least, remember, means greater than or equal to. And it says write and graph a system of linear inequalities. Okay, so there's all the information that they gave me. Let's talk about units before we start working on our equations. Dollars, 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 adults. Now I understand that this was labeled as adults too, but the number was labeled dollars, okay? It was $7, whereas this was saying 2 adults. So he's going to be separate. So we have a dollar equation and we have an adult equation. Now, when we look at these dollar pieces, we've got 3 pieces here. We have to decide, is this cover-up method or is it y equals mx plus b? Well, cover-up method, remember, has 2 types of something. We have 2 types of something. We have 2 types of people, adults and kids. So we have 7x plus 5y is going to be greater than or equal to, because remember it said at least 50. So we've used these 3 pieces. This last piece says adults. We want at least 2 adults. Well, you put the 7 with x. So that means x is adults and y is kids. So that means if you want at least 2 adults, that means x has to be greater than or equal to 2. And then what are those 2 inequalities to make sure I get positive answers? X is greater than or equal to 0. Y is greater than or equal to 0. Let's graph. First one we said was in cover-up method, 50 divided by 7. X is about 7.14. 50 divided by 5, that's 10. So let's get those on our axis. About right here maybe. Solid line. Sub in a point like 0, 0 is 7 times 0 plus 5 times 0 greater than or equal to 50. Is 0 plus 0 greater than or equal to 50? No way. So 0 did not work. I'm going to shade the other side of the line. Second one, x is greater than or equal to 2. Remember, x equals 2 is a vertical line, so here's 2. I'm going to draw a solid vertical line. If I put 0, 0 in, is 0 greater than or equal to 2? No, he is not. Here's 0. He is not greater than or equal to 2, so I'm going to shade the other side of the line. Then these last 2, remember, keep my answers being positive. So here's x is greater than or equal to 0. Shade to the right. And here's y is greater than or equal to 0. Shade up. My final answers are everything in this shaded region here. Notice I can't cross that x-axis and I can't cross that y-axis, which I can't cross that anyway because I have that vertical line there. Now, if it were to ask you for a solution, remember you can pick anything in this shaded region. So I could say, okay, that means I could take I could take 3 adults and 10 kids because it's over here. I could take 4 adults and 10 kids. I could take 5 adults and 12 kids. I could take clear over here, 10 adults and 10 kids. I could do that because that would be in that shaded region. Okay, so if you have to pick points that are solutions, you want to pick from this shaded region, and it could be any ordered pair in this shaded region. Okay, so that gives you examples for all 3 parts of this homework.